In a previous video, we learned about the user interface features along the right side of the screen in Maya. Now we're going to focus on the bottom part of our screen where we're going to find a lot more animation-related tools and menus. The most notable feature of the lower part of the user interface is this long horizontal numbered line. This is called the time slider. If you click on the time slider and drag your mouse from left to right, you'll see that we have some animation on this sphere. Don't worry too much right now about how that animation got there. We'll be talking about that in a later video. You'll notice that on certain frames, there's a little red tick mark on our time slider. This represents a keyframe in Maya, where I've indicated on frame 1, I want the sphere to be here, and on frame 120, I want the sphere to be here, and on frame 60, I want the sphere to be here. What Maya has done is tried to interpolate between these commands and find the location for the other 117 frames. Now that terminology may seem a little unfamiliar to you, so we're going to talk about what we mean when we say a frame of animation. What I have here is a folder full of images. You'll see that they're all labeled Run, and they're numbered from 0 to 140. If I double-click on image 0, we'll see that we have a 3D character in the middle of running. Right? She appears to kind of be frozen in time. Now if we progress to the next image, from frame 0 to frame 1, you'll see that she moves just a little bit, or she appears to. And if I go to the next frame, she appears to move a little bit more. Animation is the illusion that an image is moving. What we're seeing when we watch a video or when we watch a film is just a series of images that are changing very quickly. If I click through these images a little faster, you'll see that she appears to start moving. The rate at which these images change over time is called the frame rate. We currently have 141 images in this folder, and the speed at which I play these images will change the speed at which the character appears to be moving. If I play these images at 12 frames a second, the motion will look like this. If I play these images at 24 frames per second, the motion will look like this. And if I play these images at 30 frames per second, the motion will look like this. Frame rate changes depending on which media you are watching. If you're watching a film in a movie theater, you're likely watching those images play back at 24 frames per second. If you're watching a video on your computer or on the TV, you're likely seeing these videos play at 29 to 30 frames per second. If you're playing a video game, the images may be playing back at 60 frames per second. Knowing your output will allow you to set Maya to play back the animation at the correct frame rate. By default, Maya is set to play at 24 frames per second. However, if I hit play in our timeline, you'll see that this animation is playing really fast. In fact, it appears to be playing all of these frames in less than a second. So why is that? If I right-click on my timeline, we'll see that Maya has an option for playback speed. And by default, yours is going to be set to play every frame free. What that means is Maya is going to play every frame of the animation at the fastest speed it possibly can. It's going to prioritize making sure every frame renders clearly on our screen rather than maintaining the actual real speed of the animation. There's a reason that this is necessary at times, but now is not one of those times. Now we want to see our animation playback at its actual speed. So that means we need to set this to real time. Now if we hit play, you'll see this is the actual speed of the animation. Our playback features along the right side of our screen allow us to stop the animation, play the animation in reverse, jump back to the beginning of our timeline, or jump forward and back by a single frame or keyframe. Currently, our time slider is set to a range of 1 to 120. The feature directly below our time slider is our range slider. This will allow us to customize what range of our time slider is viewable. This time slider can be anything from 1 frame long to thousands of frames long. Currently, we're only viewing 120 frames, and at 24 frames per second, that would be 5 seconds. If we wanted to see more frames, I could click this little white box at the end of our range slider and drag this out to the end of our available frame range, which is 200 frames. Let's imagine that I actually wanted 10 seconds of animation. We would have to do a little bit of math, but it's not too hard. 24 frames a second times 10 seconds would equal 240 frames. These numbers at the beginning and end of our range slider allow us to customize both the viewable and the maximum and minimum amount of frames in our animation. Further along our range slider, we'll see that we have the options to set a different playback speed. Recognize that this is not changing the frame rate of our animation in Maya. This is simply allowing us to watch our animation, which is still 24 frames per second, at a slower speed. If I wanted to watch my animation at half speed, I could set it to 12 frames per second, and when I play it back, Maya will play our animation slower. I'll set this back to 24 frames per second so we can see our animation at its actual speed. If we needed to change the frame rate, that's something we have to do in our settings and preferences. We can talk about that later. Further out, we will see an option for auto key. We'll also talk about this feature a little bit later, but this allows us to automatically set a keyframe on our object when we move it. And then this little character with the cog next to them is our settings and preferences.